and welcome to the College Basketball The Road to Madness show. We're back on the air after a minor little week off with the Super Bowl in tow. Back to college basketball. As the season sort of closes down, we get into the conference tournaments and then the big-time tournament. Dynamite David with us. Are you ready to get into a big weekend of action? A lot of good games this weekend to look forward to.
Yeah, we're getting into some great weekends, some good matchups, and it's coming down to crunch time for some teams who are getting a little bit more desperate for some wins. So it's getting into a really fun time for basketball.
Yeah, definitely so. I'm really excited about this weekend slate. We looked at the games during the week. We didn't love them, so we thought we'd push back this show today to get into these big-time weekend games because I think there are a ton, this weekend, especially on Saturday, that are really going to tell us a lot of stuff. But let's kick off Friday. I want to get into the Ivy League. We don't touch on the Ivy League a whole lot, but Penn and Yale with Princeton, probably the three top teams in the Ivy League. Penn being probably the third best team in there, but I'm interested in them going to Yale. Yale, who I think is probably the best team out of the Ivy League. Yale 4-point favorites here. I'm interested to see if Penn can sort of make a run here and make a push on Yale. What do you like in between these two teams here?
Well, you look at back about a month ago, Penn got the win at home against Yale by 8 points. So they're getting 4 here on the road. That might be a pretty. That's a significant swing for a game that was just a month ago. And Penn's been on a pretty good streak. They haven't lost since that game.
Yes.
This would be a really big win for Penn in that conference if they can get it. So I may looking to take Penn plus the 4.
Yeah, I'm really interested here. I've been sort of following Yale all year long. Other than that loss to Penn, they've been pretty solid in the Ivy League overall. Non-conference, they pretty much lost who you'd think they'd lose to, beaten who you'd think they'd beat. But I liked this Yale team. It was a good Yale team last year. Interested to see if they can make up for that loss to Penn, but really going to be an interesting game. We'll move on to a game I know you're big on today. The big Richmond rivalry here. Richmond goes to VCU. VCU 3-point favorites here. A lot of things going on in this one. Just always a really big rivalry game that I don't think people sort of know how big a rivalry game this is. The two schools are basically sitting right next to each other in Richmond, Virginia. Both have pretty good, basketball histories here. VCU probably been the better team so far this year, but I will say Richmond has really started to make a push the last couple weeks. I'm interested, first off, in the game, VCU 3-point favorites. But if Richmond can come out on top here, do you think they can make a sort of late push here to maybe put their name into the ring for the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I like, Richmond's been playing really well, scoring the ball well, and they're on a hot streak. But I like this VCU defense just a little bit too much. They're near the top 50 in Ken Palm defensive ratings, and I just think at home their defense is going to shine here and be able to hold Richmond's offense back.
Yeah, I really have liked watching this Richmond team the last couple weeks, starting with a nice win versus St. Bonaventures, I think we talked about on our last show that we had. Then a win versus George Mason, lost that overtime game on the, weird little back-to-back where George Mason. But really like the way this Richmond team's playing. They played VCU earlier. VCU won 64-62 in a tight game. I do think VCU may be a little better here, but I'm curious if Richmond's going to come in here looking to try to get back right on top. They're right sort of next to each other in the Ken Palm rankings as well, so it should be a good matchup. It's always a good matchup. And
one thing I've learned –
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. One thing I've learned, these rematch games, usually the loser comes back with a little bit more will to win in those second match games. But this being at VCU, I think that hurts them a little bit.
Yeah. The thing I look at with VCU, basically they don't have a bad loss on their book.
strong schedule too.
Yeah. You look at Wagner as a loss, but Wagner's undefeated in their conference and is way by far away, the tournament favorite in their conference to go on. UTC, once again, way ahead in their conference. They're favored to get ahead. Baylor, UConn, St. Bonaventure's, Davidson, and Dayton. That's the teams that VCU has lost to. They haven't really lost to anyone that isn't, I think, at least someone who we'd consider probably a tournament team unless an upset happens. So really, when you look at that, you think VCU might be able to lean out and come out on top in this matchup. Next up, we're going to get into the MAC, Ohio versus Kent State. And Kent State's been on a really good run here. Ohio has basically been on a great run as long as they are playing Toledo. Because every time they play Toledo, they lose by about 20 points. This is a really interesting matchup as well. Ohio, Kent State 1.5-point favorites. Who do you like in this one? Can Ohio continue to beat up on the MAC with everybody that isn't Toledo?
Yeah, I like Ohio. They've been fighting through the injury bug a little bit, but they're scoring the ball well, and they're strong defensively. I like the balance they bring, and I look to them. Overall, I think they're a better team than Kent. Like Kent's hot right now, but if I had to pick them in this one, I like Ohio.
Yeah, I think this Ohio team is really, really good. I'm going to be interested to see what happens in the MAC tournament here because Ohio has been so good playing the other MAC teams, except for probably the other team in the MAC that's going to challenge for it in Toledo, which they've been killed both times. Kent State's gotten really hot, basically, I think, boosting themselves off the Akron win that both you and I ate a couple weeks ago, where they beat up in Akron, and it sort of started off their hot streak there. But I'm curious to see if Ohio can go in here, take care of business, sort of keep themselves right there for the MAC title. Next up, we go to the Horizon. I know you're big into the Horizon play. I've gotten you into the old school Midwest style of basketball. Wright State goes to Oakland here. Oakland 4-point favorites in this game. This is interesting here because, we talked about it a couple weeks ago about Oakland not having gone through and played a lot of the top teams. In the Horizon, they went through, they got a couple losses, but also I think, a little bit of that was unfair, the way the sort of schedule broke down, and with game cancellations, they were forced to play back-to-back. It's still, I think, hard to get a read on what this Oakland team is because of the circumstances in which they lost some games here. Wright State, I think if you ask me between Oakland, Cleveland State, Northern Kentucky, and Wright State, I think Wright State's probably the worst one of that group, but, I still think they're capable of winning. How do you think this game here, Wright State, Oakland, will play out Friday night?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there with your analysis of Wright State. I think they're the bottom of those four, and it really starts on the defensive side of the ball for them. They give up about 72 points a game, which is like 300s in the country on defense. And I actually really like this Oakland team. I favor them and the Norse of Northern Kentucky. I think they're the two best teams up in this conference, but they had some scheduling mishaps that caused us some woes. Like, we've got another rematch with
Detroit tonight.
Northern Kentucky and Detroit tonight, where they dropped that matchup because they had to go the day after another game, and they lost to Detroit, a team I think Northern Kentucky is much better than. And I think we'll talk about that here in a second, maybe. But yeah, I like Oakland better. They should be able to take care of Wright State. Wright State actually got some wins they probably shouldn't have due to the advantages from that scheduling makeups.
Yeah, definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think Oakland, Northern Kentucky, probably the top two teams, even though Cleveland State probably right now is the leader. But I think
they're on my banned list right now.
They're on your banned list right now.
I've taken them too many times recently, and I've gotten burned. So
yeah, I do think Oakland, Northern Kentucky, mild separation, Cleveland State, and then I think another separation there, Wright State, and then you start going through the probably Detroit and then everybody else after that in the Horizon League. But it should be an interesting matchup nonetheless. All right, let's switch things up. Let's get into Saturday's loaded slate here. Let's start out with TCU and Baylor. Baylor's had their struggles here of late. I'm curious what your level is concerned here, and can TCU go in there and sort of upset the apple cart and beat Baylor again, or do you think Baylor gets back on track here? I know you've been a fan of TCU most of this year.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed watching this TCU. They've got some upset wins that people weren't expecting, but I think Baylor's going to be a little bit too much coming back home here after that loss at Texas Tech. Baylor's, I wouldn't say desperate, but I think they're going to be really wanting to get back and prove that they're one of the better teams in that conference. They've taken some rough beatings the last couple weeks, and I think they'll be able to handle business against TCU.
Yeah, I haven't shown much concern with Baylor. They've just had a hard slate here, a lot of road games, going to Alabama, going to Kansas, going to Texas Tech. Those are hard places to go to and win, especially towards the end of your college basketball season when you're a little probably worn down. You're ready to get the big tournament started and sort of tune up for that. So I'm not all that worried. I think Baylor probably beats up on TCU pretty good here. So I like Baylor in that matchup. I still put them in my top tier team. I don't look at them. I don't think I look at anybody right now as clear, sort of like last year where we pretty much penciled in Gonzaga and Baylor to be in that Final Four. I think there's probably about 7 to 10 teams I could throw in there that I could think could make a run to the Final Four here. And I think probably of those 7 to 10 teams, I think all of them could get beat maybe as early as the second round Sweet 16 type of thing. I'm curious if you sort of think the same thing, or do you think you have a dominant sort of couple teams that you think just pencil into the Final Four here?
Yeah, I think, outside of Gonzaga, it gets really tough. A lot of people like Arizona. I don't buy into them as much as other people, as you know.
Next up, we're going to go into the Illinois-Michigan State game. This is interesting here. Illinois, we'll get to Rutgers in a little bit, who has suddenly become the hottest team in college basketball. After I think we wrote them off 3 weeks ago, all of a sudden then they went on a giant winning streak. And that cauldron in Piscataway once again became a cauldron in Piscataway. Illinois, Michigan State, we saw this probably 2 weeks ago. Michigan State went down to Illinois. Illinois beat up on them pretty good.
Yeah.
Can Michigan State get it back here, or do you think, once again, Illinois, probably coming off that loss to Rutgers, steps back up, beats up Michigan State?
I think had you asked me this yesterday prior to this Rutgers-Illinois game, I'd have been easily on Illinois here. But these are just two teams that are playing bad basketball right now in Illinois and Michigan State. And just in what has been a really disappointing Big Ten conference, in my opinion, Michigan's starting to shine a little brighter. And Rutgers, believe it or not, is playing really, really well. But, Purdue, I think they're a bit of a wolf in sheep's clothing. I think their defense is going to let them down tremendously. But, yeah, I've been impressed with Rutgers. But Illinois, Michigan State, it'll be hard to make a play there just because they're both playing so terribly. I keep thinking Michigan State's going to bounce back and get that big rebound win, and they keep letting me down. So I'd probably stay away from this game altogether.
Yeah, I have this one on a cross-off because I don't think Michigan State's played well in about basically since, that Illinois game that we watched, a couple weeks ago. And Illinois, we've talked about it. They seem to – their level seems to come and go. They seem capable of really sort of being able to reach a high level of play, but then, you watch that game versus Rutgers, and it wasn't even like they were even in the ball game, which they weren't the whole entire time. And those seem to pop up every now and then, and you just sort of look at it and are like, So, yeah, I'm a cross-off. I do think Illinois probably, once again, like I stated before, the better team overall and has a higher ceiling. Difficult to go in the road, but I think Illinois probably still comes out on top from what I've seen, at least level-wise. We'll move to the Big East. I know you're big on this conference. Xavier, a little bit of a downtrend of late. UConn seems to be back on track, so teams going in the opposite direction here. How big of a game is it for you, Xavier, to go in there and win in UConn?
I tell you what, the Big East, top to bottom, as far as night in and night out tough basketball games. There's no nights off in the Big East right now, and Xavier's been struggling with that a little bit. They get some big wins. They follow it up with a tough loss. I do like their consistency. They're really good from the free throw line. They tend to keep most games close, but they are coming off a pretty ugly 13-point loss to St. John's at home after they beat Connecticut. So they got Connecticut again this Saturday and a rematch on the road. So it's not looking great for them. I'd be interested to see what the spread's going to be, but I'd probably have to lean Connecticut in this one.
Yeah, I think I'd lean. I don't know if I totally lean Connecticut, but the way they're playing right now, I sort of do lean that way, just because I think at home Xavier will struggle on the road here. I think they put Connecticut probably, if I'm handicapping this, about a 4.5, maybe 5-point favorite. If it was around that, would you? That doesn't seem big enough for me to want to grab Xavier here, but I'm curious your thoughts on it.
Well, Xavier won by 6 in the previous matchup last week, and like I said, they make free throws. They're good in the paint, and that kind of play style makes for close games. And Connecticut's not one of those teams that's going to blow you out offensively either. So, if that line's around what you said, I could see going either way. I might not make a play on this one. I've won a few times on Xavier recently, but I don't know how much I trust him after that ugly loss to St. John's.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the Chris Beard Classic rematch here. Texas Tech comes to Texas this time. Texas Tech was just too much for them, in their gym. Going on the road, can Texas sort of bring anything to the table here, coming off a pretty bad loss? What's your thoughts on this one, or is Texas Tech once again just going to sort of overwhelm them a little bit too much?
I think this is another one where Texas's inability to find offense is gonna hurt them, and I think Texas Tech is going to get to the season sweep.
Yeah, I could see that. I want to like this Texas team coming off, a win versus Oklahoma. We'll get to them in a little bit, who's totally sort of fallen off the mark. They needed overtime there. I mentioned that really bad loss to Baylor, where they, weren't even in the game. But before that, they had the Kansas and Iowa State win. So I think at home, I want to say at home, and then you throw in the win over Tennessee, which, hasn't really lost technically since then, or a couple games before them. If we want to get into the 7-game SEC winning streak,
eight-game
SEC winning streak sandwiched between a loss, but whatever way you want to flick it to make it look good. I think at home Texas is a little bit better team, so I think I'd lean probably Texas here, especially if they're getting points. If this thing can move to 3 or 4, I don't know if it will go that way. That probably is a bit too many points at home. But I think if they were getting 3 or 4, I'd want to lean Texas a little bit here.
I don't know. That smells awfully a lot like a little bit of a trap there. So, this Texas Tech team is capable of beating this Texas team by 15 to 20.
Yeah, neutral site, I'd lean Texas Tech.
But like I said, I don't like the way they can't put up points. And now, they did shut down Kansas and were able to get enough to get the win there, and they just barely got the win against Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So they've got a little bit of momentum. It should be a good game. Hopefully, it's a little better than the last one.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to Alabama, Kentucky. Kentucky coming off the loss at Tennessee. Also another injury. I don't know if he should have been playing. Cal seemed to think he shouldn't have been playing. Alabama sort of steadied themselves. They seem to be back to beating teams they should beat, than what they were early in the SEC, losing to a couple teams they probably shouldn't have lost to. Who do you favor in this matchup? Tough for Alabama to go into Rupp and win, but we see Kentucky. Without their best player, they haven't been all that great. Do they hold on and win here in Rupp, or can Alabama go in there and upset the apple cart?
I think this is a good kind of a get-right game for Kentucky, even without Ty Washington, just because, we've seen a lot of magic from Alabama this year, but most of that magic has been at home in their home arena, and they tend to have some ugly losses, including to Georgia, at Georgia. Um, so I think Kentucky's going to be a little upset about that loss at Tennessee, and they're going to be ready to go. I think this game can't start early enough for them, and they're going to jump on Alabama early and hold that lead.
Yeah, I think it's probably too much to ask to go into Rupp and win. Not a lot of teams go in there when Kentucky is a good team and win basketball games. So I think Kentucky probably holds on even without JoJo in the lineup, but should be an entertaining game. Nonetheless, Alabama's always fun to watch, and Kentucky's been pretty entertaining to watch this year, too. Let's move to the ACC. We got an interesting one in Notre Dame and Wake Forest here. Wake continues to put up wins, not with anybody I know playing on the basketball team, but they win basketball games, and they win them pretty easy. Notre Dame sort of found their form. I think they're going to make, a return back to the NCAA tournament here. Notre Dame going to Wake. How do you see this one playing out here?
Yeah, this Notre Dame team has been playing really well. Only dropped a couple, I think about 3 ACC matchups this year. They've beaten North Carolina already. I think they swept Clemson. They've got some pretty solid wins. They dropped a really ugly one against Duke, but other than that, they've been taking care of business in the ACC. So I think this is a really good matchup for. This should be kind of an indicator of who's that number 2 spot. Well, I guess you could say North Carolina as well. They're playing a little bit better.
We'll get into them too. So
yeah, but I really like this Wake team, and they've been playing good, but they're a little inconsistent at times.
Yeah.
And they can get down in games like they got down against Duke really big, ended up making that a close one. But Notre Dame's been really solid, so I definitely think this game will be competitive.
Yeah, I'm leaning a little bit towards Wake here just because coming off 2 losses here, back at home, Notre Dame going there. I think Wake can sort of put it on them a little bit. I'm still not 100% sold on Notre Dame. Now, they might just prove me wrong. They've been on a big winning streak, but then you start looking at who they've beaten other than the Miami win. We're talking NC State, Louisville, Clemson, Boston College. It's, not like they ran through the gauntlet of the ACC or anything here. So I'm curious to see if they can get a win in Wake Forest. So, I'm not a total believer in Notre Dame quite yet. It also just might be that they play a slow pace of offensive style that I've never loved. Watching the Mike Bray style of basketball being played, that might read into a little bit, but I'm leaning Wake a little bit here, but should be an entertaining game nonetheless. Let's go to the Patriot League. We don't get a lot of Patriot League talk here, but Boston versus Colgate. The 2 of the top 3 teams in the Patriot League, for some reason, Navy has become good, so I guess we got to throw them in there. But I do think Boston and Colgate are the 2 best teams here in the Patriot League. I think this is a really, really important game because in the Patriot League, the conference tournament is played at the better team's home court, and home court advantage is really, really important in the Patriot League. So Boston goes to Colgate. Boston been the better team, but I think Colgate really made a push here of late. I like Colgate in this game. What do you make of this matchup here?
Well, Boston got the first matchup at Boston, so Colgate's coming home for the rematch here. And, like I said earlier about the rematch, getting the losing team and your losing team playing at home, you're going to come out hungry. Give me Colgate.
Yeah, leaning towards the Colgate, the pride of the O'Donnell Foils here. He was a large center who was a okay NBA player. Everybody else can look him up too. Really smart guy, by the way, but that's probably obvious since he was at Colgate. Anyway, back to the SEC. Auburn goes to Florida here. Florida, inconsistently sort of awful, but it's sort of that time of year where they always sort of come up with one of these wins that everybody points to at why the 18 and 14 Florida Gators get into the NCAA tournament. This would probably have to be that win that they would have to get, so we can have a reason to have them in there. Can Florida beat Auburn at home, or this is just not a very good Florida team and no chance?
Well, that last part is true. This is not a very good Florida team. They do play physical, but that's about all I can give them. But they're definitely on the outside looking in at the tournament right now. But that being said, they do have about 3 opportunities to get some big quad one wins against Arkansas, Auburn, and Kentucky, and they do all have those at home. Those are all home games. So maybe they can pull some magic and get one of those. But I don't know. After that loss at A&M, who was on like a 7 or 8 game losing streak, to drop that one.
Yeah, how about that pick? A&M 7-game losing streak, and somehow take the A&M and they pull out the win. I was very proud of that one.
Yeah, I don't know if Mike White's going to be the guy at Florida. We'll see. I think it's going to take a miracle to get them in the tournament.
Yeah, I think I say that every year. He's always 15 and 12, and then they win 2 or 3 games at the end of the year, and it's they have 4 quad one wins. So they always get in there. We'll see if he has that magic this year.
I think at this point, unless they make a run in the SEC tournament, they're probably going to need 2 of those 3 remaining quad one wins, because they were kind of on the bubble before these most recent couple of losses they've got to Kentucky and A&M.
Yeah.
So they're probably falling off that now, so they're going to have to get something significant to climb back in there.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, let's go to the Big 12. Oklahoma versus Iowa State. Iowa State seems to have gotten a little bit back on track. Oklahoma continues to struggle. I look at this as how important is it for Iowa State to sort of solidify their standing here and get this win versus, I don't want to say a bad Oklahoma team, because I think this is an Oklahoma team that's fully capable of beating top-tier teams. They just haven't been able to get over the hump. You saw it the other night versus Texas, where they lost a tough overtime game. I think this is just really, really important for Iowa State to put them away and sort of solidify these kind of wins and not drop a game here after a nice win this week.
Yeah, those kind of 2 through 6 spots in the Big 12 are getting really scrappy right now, and Iowa State's going to need all they can get. Now, this Oklahoma team did beat them by 13 a little over a month ago in Oklahoma. But I don't know how desperate they are. I think Iowa State's needing a little bit more to prove here, and they're coming home. So I'd probably like Iowa State in this rematch, just because I think they need a little bit more. I think Oklahoma. I don't think Oklahoma's going to have enough. I mean, the Big 12 is really strong. Maybe the committee respects that, but I just think they keep time and time again dropping games they need to win.
Yeah, I think so as well. I'm looking for Iowa State to sort of return the blowout that they got in Oklahoma and sort of solidify themselves as a team that's pretty comfortably into the NCAA tournament. I want to change things up here and move to the Southern Conference. I know you're a big Southern Conference guy. Samford has been on a streak, I think, since they had the big upset win versus Chattanooga. They, of course, qualify that back with a loss to the Citadel, but then beat Wofford, ETSU, and VMI, the other sort of teams hovering around in there. Big matchup versus UNC Greensboro, who's another team in the Southern Conference, who's hovering there with Furman and UTC. Are you a believer in this Samford team, or do you think UNC Greensboro hangs on here and beats them up? Or are we riding the wave of the Samford Bulldogs making a run here in the Southern Conference?
I like this UNC Greensboro team. I think they're pretty solid. And, they just got a good win against Chat yesterday.
Yep.
And a lot of people were on Chat in that one. So I think they've got some momentum coming into this one. Now, they did, drop one to Mercer last Sunday. So we'll see. This is another rematch. No, it's not. They haven't played. Yeah. Greensboro beat them at home. by 3 earlier in January. I like Greensboro. They may end up being able to steal this conference from Chad if Chad doesn't be careful.
Yeah, Furman was on a run, and then they've gotten cold. Greensboro, like I said, was on a run, and then they lost to Mercer, but then they bounced back and got the big win versus UTC to sort of show themselves. And, losing to Mercer isn't the worst thing in the world. It's not the best Mercer team they've ever had, but it's still a solid basketball program. But, yeah, the Sanford team's made a run here after, starting the conference really, really bad. I'm really curious to see which one of these teams going into the tournament can sort of make a push towards Chattanooga, who's shown in the last couple of weeks that they're a little bit vulnerable, towards Furman, who seems to be hot and cold. I'm curious to see which one of these teams really comes out of this game and can enter that tournament on a nice little streak here. Let's go to St. Louis Davidson. This one's interesting out of the A-10. I think these probably are the two best teams in the A-10 here. I lean a little bit towards St. Louis. Granted, they're coming off a tough loss, but I think they're a little bit better than Davidson. But nice matchup in the A-10 this week. St. Louis, Davidson. What are you leaning on this? Davidson continued to play pretty good basketball so far through the conference.
Yeah, St. Louis was on a good little run there until they ran into resurgent St. Bonaventure team and got beaten back-to-back games by your Bonnies. But other than that, St. Louis has been pretty good all season. So I like them, but, Davidson's been pretty solid too. St. Louis has got to quit. They dig themselves in holes in a lot of these games, and then they try to, come storming back in the second half, and that's not a great way to plan out and execute your basketball games. But I think if they can play a little bit better in the first half, they're one of the best teams in this conference.
Yeah, you mentioned it. If they dig themselves in a hole versus Davidson, I don't think they can work themselves back. But if they're able to stick with them, I think by the second half, their quality can probably pull away from Davidson. I'm interested to see what this line is, but should be a really, really good game in the A-10. We'll move back to the SEC. Tennessee versus Arkansas. We mentioned Tennessee's 8-game SEC win streak. They've certainly gone through the sort of bottom tier of the SEC, to build this win streak. And then they got the nice win versus Kentucky, but they go on a tough one here. To Arkansas. Arkansas, I think, probably the hottest team in the SEC. Can they come out a winner here? Does Arkansas sort of hold on at home here? Tennessee's had their problems on the road this year.
Yeah, Tennessee has yet to prove to me that they can go on the road and get a significant win. All their road wins that they have are against the bottom feeders, as you say, or the middle to bottom half of the SEC. And going into Bud Walton in Arkansas is not an easy task, especially on a Saturday. It's going to be a sellout crowd. I just don't feel like this is a good spot for Tennessee. I think they may be able to get Arkansas next week when they come to Thompson Bowling, but I just don't feel good about this one. And especially, I think, Tennessee coming off that win over Kentucky, Arkansas may be getting, 4 or 5 coming into this game. And I think the smart play would be with Arkansas.
Yeah, I'm interested to see this spread because, early on I thought they were bloating spreads for Tennessee. They sort of backed off of that. And then I think the last couple of weeks they've been bloating spreads for Arkansas, probably because they were losing their shirt on them for about that 2-week stretch when I think both you and I took advantage of it pretty nicely when Arkansas went on their run. I'm curious to see which team they sort of favor towards this one. I just don't think Tennessee can win these type of games on the road here from what I've seen. Maybe they can, but I think probably a better chance on the return back home where Arkansas, comes and plays them, that they have a chance to win. Let's move to Conference USA, and I sort of want to talk about 2 games here. I want 2 of these teams to come out of Conference USA and get in the NCAA tournament. I don't think we're going to get 2. I think Louisiana Tech's dropped off a little bit, but MTSU has sort of stepped up their play. The big one, of course, is North Texas versus UAB, who I think are definitely the 1 and 2 teams in Conference USA. Then you have MTSU and Florida Atlantic, who's Florida Atlantic, who's solid, who's hovering in and around maybe the 5th, 6th best team in the thing. North Texas UAB, let's get to that one first. How many teams do you think Conference USA? Do you feel like only one's coming out and it's probably going to be the tournament winner? If you think that, this game probably doesn't have all that much of meaning.
I honestly think that either UAB or North Texas, one of them is going to be the one I think that's good enough to get in the tournament without winning their tournament, their conference tournament. I just don't know if Middle Tennessee's resume has been quite as good as those other two. And but I like, I really like the way this UAB team is playing.
Yeah.
But they're 2 games back in North Texas, so I think it's really going to come down to the conference tournament. North Texas, give them credit, they're taking care of business. They've won 11 in a row. They're on fire. But I don't, like you said, some of the typical guys like Louisiana Tech, they're normally much better than they are this year. So beating them carries a little bit more weight than it has so far for some of these teams.
Yeah. I think if North Texas can go into UAB and get this win and continue to win out and then maybe lose in the maybe semifinals, probably finals, they can probably work their way into an at-large. The profile isn't all that great, but I certainly think they need a win over like a UAB. They just need to run this slate versus Conference USA. UAB, I think, has to have this win versus North Texas for any even talk of an at-large bid. And, MTSU's been probably the hottest team in Conference USA outside of North Texas. I don't think they have a shot, but they certainly have to run the table here. Versus a tough game versus Florida Atlantic. I sort of have my eye on it if maybe they bloat this spread a little bit for this MTSU game, and Florida Atlantic's getting points at home here. Let's go out. I know these are 2 teams you don't pay any attention to, but the Big Sky. Southern Utah, Montana State. Weber State has dropped off just a little bit, and I must say, I've been keeping my eye on Montana State just a tad because they've made a bit of a nice run here, and we don't know a lot of Montana State. Nobody watches a lot of Montana State. But I'm interested if they can get this big win here versus Southern Utah at home, make a push here in the Big Sky Conference. What do you know of Southern Utah, Montana State, other than maybe where they're located on a map?
Well, I know that if Southern Utah gets this win here, you're going to have a 3-way tie at the top of the Big Sky Conference. So that's always exciting. I can tell you one thing. Only the winner of this conference tournament will be getting into the NCAA tournament.
I can't make a push for Montana State for an at-large.
I don't think that's going to fly.
I don't think so either. Just an interesting game. Certainly one you should watch on Saturday out of the Big Guy. Montana State, fun watch here. North Carolina, Virginia Tech. I talked to you the other day about North Carolina. When they look good, they look really good. Now, they basically have not looked good versus any good team all year long, but anyone who is not in their class, they can score 100 on in about, 30 minutes. Virginia Tech's
Unless you're Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Virginia Tech's been on a nice run here. Starting to creep up a little bit into the tourney talk. What do you make of this matchup, North Carolina, Virginia Tech here?
Yeah, North Carolina won this by 10 in the previous matchup, but Virginia Tech's been on a winning streak since that loss. But I don't know if North Carolina is going to drop 2 back-to-back games that should win. Just a really ugly loss to Pitt. I'd probably have to take UNC here.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think North Carolina sort of bounces back here after that stupid loss after totally massacring Florida State a couple days before. Always interesting with Carolina this year. You never quite know what you're going to get. Hey,
if their offense is clicking in the tournament, watch out because if if they're hitting their shots and grooving on offense, they can beat anybody.
Yeah, see, that's just the weird thing. Like, I think they could probably hang 100 on basically any team in basketball if they're hitting, and also I think they could give up 100 to basically any team in college basketball as well.
The thing is, they've got a lot of guys that can create their own shots. Some NBA talent for sure. Create their own shots and get open looks. The thing is they got to get more consistent with those looks falling. Right now, they just have too many times where they go cold.
Yeah. All right, stay in the ACC. Virginia versus Miami. Miami's been consistent throughout basically the ACC with a loss here or there. Virginia's, I think, started to play a little bit better. I've been milking them the last 2 weeks, starting with a nice win versus Duke. What do you make of this matchup here? Are you turning a little bit on Virginia? I know you were down on them earlier in the ACC. Are you thinking they're starting to find their form a little bit here the last couple weeks?
I think they like you said, they've been finding their form a little bit. That the defense has always been there with Virginia. They're getting their offensive group back a little bit. They really blew up this Miami team in their previous matchup, and just come off a couple of really good wins against Wake and Louisville. I'm sorry, that was Miami.
Yeah.
Miami beat Wake and Louisville.
Yes.
But it should be a good matchup. Miami's going to be coming for some revenge, and they're the home team. I'd say it'll be a lot closer than the first one. But these are two teams that are kind of in the same almost area a little bit. I'd maybe put Miami a little bit ahead of Virginia now. But we'll see coming out of this matchup.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if Virginia can sort of go and win a second one. I'd be impressed if they could win two, over Miami here. We're sort of moving to last rights here with Florida State. They play Duke.
My self-proclaimed best team in the ACC about a month ago.
They're sort of in the same boat as Florida here. They aren't a very good team. They haven't played it. They got a couple nice wins, one of those being Duke. Can Florida State sort of get their second win versus Duke and sort of just give themselves a little bit of a life raft going maybe a late push into the tournament? I haven't seen anything that says that's what this is going to be, but, if they can beat Duke twice, at least there's something to sort of grasp onto.
Yeah, I think outside of their conference tournament, this win over Duke is a must for them to get into the NCAA tournament because other than Notre Dame and maybe a road matchup against Virginia, they don't have really any quality games left. I think they are on the outside looking in the way they played the last month. So this is a must win, and I don't see a season sweep of Duke. I mean, how often does Florida State sweep Duke in basketball?
Not very often. We'll see in the future once Coach K leaves, if that turns around. But that being said, I don't know how much longer Leonard Hamilton has either. It's not like he's a spring chicken or anything as well. Drake versus Loyola Chicago. Loyola went up to Drake, lost that game. These are probably the two best, I'd say, teams in the MVC. I know Missouri State definitely sort of throws their hat in the ring a little bit there as well. But Drake, Loyola, Chicago. I don't know if Loyola Chicago can get an at-large bid. They do have name and brand recognition now, so I think they'll at least have more name recognition than, say, a Montana State would, having a couple losses to a Drake or a Missouri State on their schedule. Does Drake come in here, beat Loyola Chicago in Chicago, get the season sweep, or does Chicago put it on them here?
I don't know. Drake, like you said, Drake won the previous matchup. Earlier on in the year, I would have, between these two, I'd have gone Drake, but Drake's lost 3 out of their last 4.
Yeah, they've been on a bad run here.
And Loyola's got a couple of good wins. They got the rematch against Missouri State. They got a good win against I think a solid Northern Iowa team. Yeah. So I'd probably have to lean Loyola Chicago here, being the home team and the rematch. I think they're slightly better right now than Drake.
Yeah. Drake got the win versus Loyola Chicago, then, of course, skipped the hump game versus Indiana State and losing that one. And then after that, proceeded to fall off a cliff the next couple weeks. But, yeah, I think Loyola Chicago probably controls this game, gets their revenge back over Drake in Chicago here. DePaul versus Seton Hall. DePaul not... I think this is what you're talking about with, the Big East being so deep. DePaul is barely, under 500 here, but I don't think they're a bad basketball team. No. You look at Seton Hall, who's way under 500 in Big East Conference, but I think Seton Hall is a very good basketball team. I've watched them play numerous times. They are a good basketball team, but, they go through a meat grinder in playing a lot of these other good Big East teams, haven't gotten the win. I think this goes into the category of Seton Hall cannot lose this game, even though it might be a difficult game versus, a DePaul team has shown the ability to beat, the upper tier teams in the Big East.
Yeah, I think this is more of a who needs it most kind of thing. And I think despite how much I think about DePaul, I really do like this whole conference. I wish I could see every team in the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, I can't. I just think Seton Hall is still in a position to claw their way in. And so I think that desperation is going to get there because I don't think there's no way DePaul gets in at this point. So I think the need for the win is bigger for Seton Hall, plus it being at home. And they got to get, I say that DePaul, they're in the bottom of the conference right now. So Seton Hall's got to get the win against the bottom of the conference, however tough that game may be.
Yeah.
Outside of Georgetown, I think.
Well, no one, the original Big East one is the one that's pulling down the conference. Georgetown bad, but from DePaul up, I think basically anybody can beat anybody on any given night. I love this Seton Hall team, but they've just been put in a meat grinder, and they haven't been able to, sneak away with wins versus the other Big East teams, and it's making their record look bad, and it's just one of those where they can't come up empty here versus a DePaul team who also sits towards the bottom of the conference. It just looks bad, even though I think this DePaul team is a solid basketball team as well. So big game for Seton Hall this week. New Mexico State versus Grand Canyon. New Mexico State had the big win at home versus Grand Canyon. The rematch, we go into Arizona here. Good matchup. New Mexico State dropped a couple of weird ones, which has put my Seattle, the Fighting Elgin Baylor's back, on top of the conference here. Can Grand Canyon come up with a big win here versus New Mexico State? New Mexico State's shown the ability to sort of lose to a couple teams where it looks like they weren't paying attention. But when they've played the top tier teams, they've sort of kicked their butt. Can Grand Canyon come away here?
Well, speaking of losing the teams where they're not paying attention, Grand Canyon dropped one to Dixie State a couple games back. So
yes,
I'm not so sure. This is just one of those conferences where I think those top four teams any given day can beat each other.
Yeah.
Tend to lean home teams in these matchups. So I'd probably be leaning New Mexico State in this one, but it's not really much of a road trip for Grand Canyon.
Yeah. Fighting Antelopes here versus New Mexico State. Should be a good matchup versus the Lobos. All right, let's go to the West Coast Conference. Santa Clara, who's throwing their hot hat in the ring here to bust this up. Yeah. I think we can say there are probably 6 good teams now in the West Coast Conference. Everybody who slaps on the conference, I think St. Mary's, Gonzaga, San Francisco, Santa Clara, and BYU, all pretty good basketball teams here. They go to Gonzaga. Any chance for an upset here, or just this is one step too far, and Gonzaga's just a couple too many classes ahead of the rest of the pack?
I think this is one of those ones where the style of play matchup is going to be rough for Santa Clara here. Santa Clara has been one of those teams that offensively kind of dominates their opponents, and Gonzaga is not one of those teams that you're going to offensively dominate. Gonzaga is somebody you want to slow the game way down and keep the ball out of their hands. St. Mary's matches up a lot better with Gonzaga than Santa Clara, even though I think Santa Clara is probably a better basketball team than St. Mary's.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think this stays within single digits.
Yeah, I don't think it does either. I'm curious to see if they. Basically, Gonzaga's been getting 30-point spreads every game. I'm curious to see if they sort of go 25 and above in this one. If it does, it might raise my eyebrow to grab a Santa Clara. And if they put a money line on it, it'd be really, really big. I might just take a flyer on it, though I don't think it would really happen. But it'd be so big that...
Well, I think in that previous matchup, St. Mary's was getting 16 or 17, and I think it ended up staying within that number barely. So we'll see how much Santa Clara is getting, because head-to-head, Santa Clara has been a better team than St. Mary's. But like I said, play styles are drastically different.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the Pac-12. One team you love, one team you're a little down on. Oregon goes to Arizona. Tough road trip. Oregon continues to play good and then drop a weird one. That's basically been their whole season. Can they go into Arizona, win this game, or is Arizona going to come out ahead here?
I don't know, because I actually really looked at Oregon last night as maybe making a pick with them. I think they were -4 on the road against Arizona State, and they just got hammered.
Yes.
So Arizona State team. I don't know, going into Arizona, who's proven to be a much better team at home, Oregon stands much of a chance, and Oregon's really starting to get in some trouble here.
Yeah, they're interesting. You look at their Pac-12 slate, their losses are Colorado, California, Arizona State, and, you're just like, why? They have wins over UCLA, wins over USC, and they can't beat the bottom tier of the Pac-12. They just throw out these duds.
They also have a tough schedule the rest of their year.
Well, that's why they close here: Arizona, UCLA, USC, and then at Washington State. Now, Washington State aren't great teams, but those are two tough road games. Who can occasionally play solid basketball here. I just, at this point, I don't know what I'm getting with the Oregon, so I'd probably stay away. We either get an Oregon probably 2-point win, or Oregon getting massacred and losing by 25. There doesn't seem to be a real in between. You mentioned it, 81-57 to Arizona State. Arizona State has been basically awful all year long, and to go in there and lose, just inexcusable. The only thing I could say is they probably didn't travel back up to Oregon playing that game, so they probably, went straight from Tempe into Tucson and stayed the night. So maybe they'll be a little bit better and not having to make that, across the United States travel. Just don't know what to get from this Oregon team right now. A little just too inconsistent. Staying on the West Coast here, BYU St. Mary's. BYU's bounced back a little bit here. I still don't think they have enough, but they certainly probably need to get this win versus St. Mary's if they want any shot at it. St. Mary's, nice win over San Francisco earlier this week to sweep that series. BYU St. Mary's, what do you make of this one? Should be an entertaining game. If you're looking for good basketball, these two teams play good basketball, fun to watch.
Yeah, it should be a great game, but I think I'd have to give the edge to St. Mary's. I just think they've been a little bit more consistent this year than BYU. They've been more competitive. They gave Gonzaga a much better matchup than BYU has. And like you said, took care of San Francisco. I think BYU split with San Francisco. I'd probably roll with St. Mary's.
Yeah, definitely so.
I like them, and it's really kind of like Gonzaga and then 2A and 2B with St. Mary's and Santa Clara for me. And then I've got BYU and San Francisco kind of behind those two.
How dare you insult the Fighting Bill Cartwright, the Dons, baby. All right, let's move to Sunday. Couple games here on Sunday. It piqued my interest. We're starting with Michigan, Wisconsin. We talked about it a little bit. Michigan getting I don't know what we're calling a win versus Iowa. I think both of you think Iowa is garbage. So they did win in Iowa. And, they had that big win over Purdue. Granted, they sandwiched that with a loss. But Michigan, Wisconsin, any chance Michigan can go in there, get that win versus Wisconsin, or Wisconsin just too disciplined a team, will probably come out on top at home.
You've been riding them the last couple games. This Michigan team's playing really solid basketball right now. I was a little doubtful last night in that Iowa game, but, most of the people I saw on the internet were taking Michigan. You were taking Michigan, and that proved to be right. And Wisconsin's, been pretty inconsistent. Now they are really solid at home.
Yeah.
So we'll see how Michigan can do going into that hostile environment. But if Michigan wants to keep making a case for them being one of the better teams in the Big Ten, they need this one bad.
Yeah, definitely so. I think they need one more sort of real quality win on here.
Well, and I was going to say, these Big Ten standings are crazy right now. I think you can go from, 1 to like 8, and there's like a 2 to 3 game difference. So, anyone as far down as Iowa, I think could still make a play at the number 1 going into the end of the season. So, really interesting conference. I'm sure the committee will get them all into the tournament because they love the Big Ten. So we'll see how it goes. But I think Michigan's actually kind of separating themselves a little bit and should climb up the standings. So
certainly if we're leaving somebody out, I'd rather them leave Iowa out now than Michigan.
Oh, I tell you right now, if I had to choose between Michigan State and Michigan, I'd be all over Michigan. I think they're a better team. I like Rutgers. I like Michigan, but I'm very down on Illinois. I'm down on Iowa, and Ohio State's been nothing special either.
Yeah, well, we'll get to AAC. I'm interested here. There are 2 games here. I think 2 teams probably are pretty solid in. Granted, SMU lost at Temple, but I think SMU's proven they're a tournament team. Houston easily in. And then we got 3. We got Temple, we got Cincinnati, we got Memphis. I don't think they can stretch to 4. I think 3 teams get in, and if you're going Houston, SMU, it sort of leaves one spot for Temple, Cincinnati, Memphis here. Temple plays Cincinnati at Cincinnati. Memphis plays SMU. What do you think's the most important win for which team to get here? And can Memphis sort of continue their streak? They've been playing well. Nice win at Cincinnati. Nice win versus Houston. Can they go into SMU and win? And Temple, Cincinnati, I think this is sort of a loser leave town matchup here. Somebody loses, they're really on the back burner here.
Yeah, I think Cincinnati needs this win over Temple bad. Just looking at the end of their schedule, their last 2 games of the season, they've got at Houston and at SMU.
Yeah.
So those are 2 really tough games that they could potentially drop both of. I think, right now, those teams you mentioned, I think Memphis is actually playing the best basketball despite their horrendous start earlier to the year. I think they're finally starting to gel a little bit, and they're playing some really good wins, including that big win against Cincinnati. So I definitely think Cincinnati needs this win the most over Temple.
Yeah, I think so. I'm curious if Temple can really throw their names in there. Having that win over SMU earlier this week, going into Cincinnati, getting that win. I mentioned I liked them a couple weeks ago. Still think they're a pretty solid team, but they need that win at Cincinnati if they want to sort of stay in the mix here. Curious if Memphis can sort of keep this run going. Another good Big East matchup, Marquette versus Creighton. I don't think either of these teams are in real, trouble to miss out on the tournament. I think these are 2 pretty solid, tournament teams here. But what do you make of this one? Can Marquette go into Creighton, get that win, or do you favor Creighton here?
These are 2 teams that it's been interesting because they can really beat anybody in the Big East, but they also can lose to pretty much anybody in the Big East. I think DePaul, is it DePaul that just got a win over Marquette?
Yeah.
Recently. So, but Marquette earlier on was really, really impressing me the way they were playing. Creighton tends to play a lot better at home than they do on the road. So I don't know. It'll be a great matchup, and I'd be interested to see what the point spread is on that.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where they put this number. I'm really curious if they make Creighton dogs at home. They don't tend to do that, but if they were, I'd probably be quick to jump on that for sure. Back to the Horizon, I think, we mentioned it earlier. We think these are the two best teams. Little bit of weirdness the first time they matched up, in where the game got canceled. They had to play the next night, then they had to play the back-to-back. Northern Kentucky came out ahead. Northern Kentucky now goes to Oakland. A little bit more of a normal schedule. They're Friday, Sunday. Northern Kentucky, Oakland here. Who do you like in this one? Does the Norse come out ahead, or do you favor Oakland here? I'm curious where you're headed, especially since we both probably think these are the two best teams, in the Horizon. I'm interested to see how they sort of favor these two teams going into the Horizon, conference tournament too, because I think they'll make Cleveland State, the favorite. So that might give you a little bit of a nice little underdog money here on these two. But Northern Kentucky, Oakland, where are you sitting here?
It should be a really great game because, I look at it one way. I think Northern Kentucky's got a little bit of advantage. I think they're playing an inferior team Saturday, Friday. I think Detroit isn't nearly as tough as Wright State, so Oakland's got a tougher matchup. But then you look, Oakland's the team that gets to stay at home and play Wright State and not have to travel, and Northern Kentucky's got to come to Oakland for that matchup.
Yeah.
So
Not
while I like
California,
Northern Kentucky,
by the way, for people, it's Michigan. Just
yeah. Still a little bit of traveling. But there's something to be said about being able to play in your home gym and then turn around and play another one in your home gym while, they should be able to take care of Wright State. I think they will. So both of these teams, I think, will win their Friday matchup coming into this Sunday game. But I think I'd probably give the edge a little bit to Oakland. I'd say the line, depending on the Friday outcomes, if they both win, this line will probably be almost a pick 'em. Maybe Oakland by 1 or 2 favorites. Not enough for really me to take either side. But if I had to lean one way, it'd be Oakland.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they sort of think who they think is the better team between those two, because I honestly think one of these two teams will be the one that wins the conference tournament. So I'm curious to see who the odds makers think is the better team in this matchup. Should be a really good one, and maybe at least a little bit more of a real matchup than what we got the last time around, where things sort of got out of whack. Rutgers Purdue. I think this is actually sneakily one of the better games of the weekend, if not the best. Rutgers has been on fire. Much like we loved Florida State and they went in the tank, we threw dirt on Rutgers, and they have popped up Michael Myers style and been like, we're still here.
Look at those last 4 games.
Yeah. I think if they get this win versus Purdue, they're easily in the NCAA tournament, no questions asked. Now they're out of Piscataway here. Can they go into Purdue, West Lafayette, get this win, or do you favor Purdue here?
Well, they went into Wisconsin and took care of business there. Purdue defensively is just horrendous.
Yeah.
But the thing is Rutgers is not a team that's going to put up, 80 to 100
if
on
Iowa
either.
wasn't in the conference, we'd be making fun of the Purdue defense.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if I see Purdue, dropping a couple in a row here. They got the win over Northwestern, so maybe not so much. But just really ugly loss to Michigan.
Yeah.
I guess a week and a half ago. I find it hard to believe that Rutgers could do it again, especially away from home. If they do, crown them. Gosh.
Yeah.
They almost deserve to win the conference for going on that kind of run.
Yeah, I know. If they can pull this one off after a couple nice road wins and then a couple of nice home wins, after we threw them under the bus and I was disappointed, they found their life and played really good basketball too.
I tell you what, the spread might be worth looking at here because despite their win streak, I could still see them getting 5 or 6.
Yeah, especially the way they can control pace on a game. If they can get this into sort of that sloggy Rutgers style, I don't think Purdue would like that. I know that sounds weird judging by Purdue basketball up until, 2016. But yeah, I think Rutgers, if they can get it into that sloppy sort of just grindy stuff and, hammer the crap out of Purdue and no fouls be called, this could be a Rutgers at least where they're close. Let's move into a team I know I got you to love, and then you took them, and they've sort of gotten crappy since then. I want to thank you for that. But Bellarmine plays Jacksonville State. Bellarmine's been a little bit struggling. They've sort of found themselves back on track here. Jacksonville State had a little swing, but they've found themselves back on track. Good matchup here. Can Bellarmine put themselves back on track and get this win versus Jacksonville State? We saw a couple weeks ago Jacksonville State just sort of a better quality team than Bellarmine, though.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I think Jacksonville State is, right there, one of the best in the conference and maybe the best in the conference. So I just don't know if Bellarmine's quite got it. And plus, they haven't been playing that great as of late.
Yeah, I know. You took them, and then they started playing bad. I was taking them for 3 weeks, and they won every game. You took them once, and they've been in the tank since.
Same with your Lancers, your Longwood Lancers. They've been killing me, too.
Yes, I know. They won last night. They didn't cover, though. I think they didn't cover by 1, I believe. I think they won by 6. I believe it was 7. So, tough one last night. All right. That's our show for the week. We'll be back Monday to recap the weekend and talk about the week ahead. Be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to follow our man, Dynamite David, on Twitter. Dynamite, where can we find you on Twitter?
You can follow me on Twitter at GLNDynamite_D. I'm putting out picks every day.
All right, that's our show, and we're out.
Good! They did it! There's the pass to Laettner. Puts it up.